Hey, how's it going? And welcome to another Fither 30k week video. So I have been playing a metric fuck ton of Monster Hunter World Iceborne recently. I got it on PC when the expansion came out, and ever since then, baby, it's just been hunt, hunt, hunt. I don't think I've even played another video game in the past few months. And it's been great fun. Monster Hunter is, I would say, my favorite game to just play. Like, even though I do thoroughly love me some Guilty Gear, it's not exactly the kind of game I want to play all the time. But there's rarely any time when I'm like, I don't want to play Monster Hunter. It's a pretty constant desire to play it. So I figured I'd take the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite monsters, the Bazelgeuse. This is going to be a more personal look at the monster from my own experiences and just good memories I have of him. But if you want a more scientific look, I would highly recommend checking out Oceanus' video on the subject, which I'll have linked in the description. So anybody who's played Monster Hunter World and at least made it up into high rank has probably had this experience. You're kind of just minding your own business, hunting a monster, and then something happens. You either hear a very distinct roar you've never heard before, or you start to see these little shells fall all over the ground from somewhere. Or, if you're lucky enough, out of nowhere, a psychotic pinecone-looking thing dive bombs right into your face to announce its presence. That is, of course, my good friend, the Bazelgeuse. And Bazelgeuse is an interesting monster just because there's never a moment in the story where, you know, the rest of the guild is like, there's a Bazelgeuse, oh, we need you to go find it. No, the Bazelgeuse finds you, motherfucker. And similar to the Deviljho, who's my first favorite monster, I would say Bazelgeuse is a pretty solid, maybe third. He's definitely in the top 5. But Bazelgeuse just shows up. And even though the introductory cutscenes that'll play whenever you find a new monster most of the time are really cool and super effective, I think there's something pretty unique about not having one of those play and just having the monster appear. I've always held the belief that if you want to make something in a video game seem impressive, show it in a gameplay sense. You know, I don't want to hear a story about how powerful this character is. I want to see them in action in the same gameplay the game is built around, killing something. And Bazelgeuse kind of adheres to this philosophy. He doesn't really make such a big deal about himself. He doesn't have a cutscene that plays, you have to find him, or he's gonna find you, and then he's gonna try to kill you. And you're pretty much always gonna discover him when you're trying to fight something else. Much like the Deviljho, he's this, like, jack-in-a-box that you never quite know when he's gonna show up. And when you're first starting, you don't even know he exists at all. But he quickly establishes himself as being one of the scariest non-Elder Dragon threats. So, Bazelgeuse are insane. I would highly suggest you guys check out that Oceanus video that I talked about a second ago. But Bazelgeuse are this hyper-aggressive, crazy species of monster that actively seek out fights with stronger monsters. And rather than being smart about it and just being like, yeah, I'll just eat whatever, you know. Plenty of nice vulnerable monsters around that I can feast on. But no, Bazelgeuse seeks out fights and tries to join in on them. Like, you'll notice Bazelgeuse behave in this way that they respond to other monsters' roars. You know, if you pay attention, a monster will roar, and then a little bit will go by, and you can be pretty certain that the Bazelgeuse is coming for you. It's a really bizarre and super interesting, character trait of these monsters that I don't think anything else really does. Like, a Deviljho will go anywhere and fight and kill anything because it's hungry. But a Bazelgeuse will stop what it's doing and go to try to fight. So that on its own is just a really, kind of charming thing. I tend to like these monsters that have behaviors and just things about them that I find really funny. Like in my Deviljho video, I mentioned how even though he's this horrible abomination that destroys ecosystems and eats anything, there's something kind of funny about how goofy and weirdly proportioned he is and how tiny his arms are. And the Bazelgeuse manages to maintain a balance between that pant-shitting moment when you know he's there, and also this sort of slight delight of knowing that he's hanging out. Plus there's just his design, which I think is really super cool. He's got a big pinecone looking ass head, And he's just such a weirdly proportioned thing. He has that enormous head with all those scales and then a big-ass tail, but he can still fly, like, pretty fine. And there's his affinity for exploding things. And this is gonna get me put on, like, an FBI watch list, but I've always loved bombs. Bombs and explosions are the coolest thing to me. You know, characters like Kira Yoshikage with Killer Queen, or Deidara from Naruto, Junkrat from Overwatch. It's a weird pantheon of characters, but I don't know, something about just bombs and explosions really satisfies the little 9-year-old boy in my soul. So whenever Basil just, you know, drops his explosive scales and makes things blow up, I'm like, yeah, dude, make things blow up! Because I'm a child, you see. So Bazelgeuse, he was great. He was probably my favorite new, like, Monster Hunter World monster. I loved him dearly. And then in Iceborne came along the Seething Bazelgeuse. Just an ode to the concept that, like, there is no such thing as too far. They somehow managed to take an angry, exploding wyvern and make him more angry and more explodey. Like regular Bazelgeuse, you start to figure him out after a while. He has his charges, he has his thing where he drops his scales. He'll shoot fire, make the scales blow up, he'll do his bombing run thing, and after a while you kind of figure it out. But Seething Bazelgeuse is chaos incarnate. This motherfucker drops scales everywhere. Regular Bazelgeuse felt enough like it was a World War II, like, battle. But now, not only does he fling his scale bombs everywhere, he has these new purple bombs. Purple is my favorite color, by the way. So I was very delighted to see that. Purple bombs that look like gumdrops. They remind me of in Shrek 2, when the giant gingerbread man, like, kicks his gumdrop. Not the gumdrop buttons. It's like that, it's like the gumdrop buttons, which stick to the ground and swell up and explode. And even though it's pure chaos, it's also really fun. It's just an absolute scramble trying to run away from the Bazelgeuse and his bombs and the purple bombs. So yeah, I thoroughly love Basil. Definitely my favorite new monster in Monster Hunter World. I love his design, I love his behaviors. Oh, I didn't even mention his theme song. I think that's one of the most memorable, best songs from World. And it really does remind me of something you would hear in, like, a World War II movie. Which is probably what they were going for. Love his weapons, his armor, his just everything about him really, really appeals to me. So I love my little angry, explodey boy. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.